You have the right to vote, the right to free speech, the right to protest. These are the pillars of modern democracy, the very definition of freedom, right? But what if they're a lie? What if these rights, the ones we hold so sacred, aren't a guarantee of your liberty, but an illusion designed to mask a deeper, more profound kind of unfreedom? This isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. It's a direct accusation from one of history's most disrupting thinkers, Karl Marx. In 1843, long before the Communist Manifesto, a young Marx wrote a dense, fiery essay that took a sledgehammer to our modern understanding of freedom. He argued that the civil rights you cherish are at best a halfway house to real liberty, and at worst, they're a beautiful cage. Today, we're breaking down his explosive theory of political versus human emancipation to understand why Marx would look you in the eye and tell you your rights are a carefully constructed lie. Let's just think about it for a second. You can vote for who's in charge, but you can't vote to stop your rent from doubling. You have freedom of speech, but you can still get fired for something you say online. You have the right to assemble, but you still have to wake up every single morning and sell your time to a boss just to survive. This is the central paradox that obsessed Marx. He saw our lives as split between two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have the political sphere, a kind of heaven on earth where everyone is theoretically equal. In this world, your vote counts just as much as a billionaire's. You're a citizen, an abstract member of the state, equal before the law, no matter your job, your bank account, or your background. This is what Marx called political emancipation. But then there's the other world, the one we actually live in. This is the realm of civil society, an earthly slugfest of competition, self-interest, and brutal inequality. Here, you aren't an abstract citizen, you're a worker, a renter, a customer. You're an individual driven by your own private needs, forced to compete against everyone else to meet them. In this world, the billionaire has infinitely more power than you, and your legal equality means jack squat when you're facing economic desperation. Marx argued that modern governments have perfected this split. They give us heavenly political rights while leaving the earthly economic food chain completely untouched. This creates a massive contradiction. You're a free citizen in theory, but a chained-up wage earner in practice. To really get what Marx was so angry about, we have to go back to a heated debate in 19th century Prussia over Jewish rights. Back then, Prussia was officially a Christian state, and Jewish people were denied the full rights of citizenship. A big-shot philosopher named Bruno Bauer, who was actually one of Marx's old mentors, jumped into the fray with what he thought was a radical solution. Bauer said that for Jews to be politically free, they had to stop being Jewish. His logic? A truly free and modern state had to be secular, with no room for specific religious identities. To be a real citizen, you had to leave your religion at the door. Marx read this and absolutely lost it, firing back with a blistering critique that became the essay On the Jewish Question. He called Bauer's argument simplistic and completely backward. Forcing Jews to abandon their faith wasn't liberation. He said it was just demanding they assimilate to a different secular standard. But more importantly, Marx argued that Bauer totally misunderstood how a secular state actually works. He said, just look at the United States. America has no state religion, yet it's one of the most religious countries on earth. A secular state doesn't abolish religion, it privatizes it. It kicks religion out of the official public square, but lets it run wild in the private lives of its citizens. The state becomes free from religion, but the people don't. And for Marx, this was the perfect metaphor for the whole problem. Bauer was confusing the freedom of the state with the freedom of the human being, and in doing so, he was missing the real chains that bound everyone, whether they were Jewish or Christian. This is where Marx drops the hammer and lays out the core of his entire argument. First, he defines political emancipation. This is what Bauer was focused on, getting equal rights and citizenship in a modern state. It's the state freeing itself from old world limits like religion or property requirements for voting. Marx admits this is a great step forward. It's obviously better to have civil rights than not have them, but he warns it is not the final form of human emancipation. It's a job half done. Why? Because it creates what Marx called the egoistic man. The rights written into our constitutions, liberty, property, security, aren't rights that connect us as a community, they're rights that separate us from each other. The right to liberty is defined as the right to do whatever you want as long as you don't bother others, basically treating society like a collection of isolated atoms bouncing off each other. The right to property is the right to enjoy your stuff selfishly without any thought for anyone else. Marx argued these rights exist to protect you as a member of civil society, that is, an individual withdrawn into himself, his private interest and his private desires, and separated from the community. They turned the dog-eat-dog world of capitalism into a sacred virtue. This leads to his ultimate goal, human emancipation. This is a much deeper, more radical kind of freedom. It's not about getting political rights. It's about tearing down the wall between our public citizen self and our private economic self. Human emancipation means freeing ourselves from the economic pressures and social loneliness that capitalism creates. It means building a society where we're no longer driven by selfish competition, but actually relate to each other as a real community, as a collective species being. For Marx, true freedom isn't the right to compete in a system that's rigged from the start. It's the liberation from that system entirely. It's getting rid of the social order that makes us need rights to protect ourselves from each other in the first place. So if our rights are just a pretty illusion in a deeply unequal world, what's the point of the state that grants them? According to Marx, the modern democratic state isn't some neutral referee. Its main job is to manage the chaos of civil society. It creates an imaginary community, a political heaven of equality, to make the real-world hell of inequality feel less miserable. The state gives you the right to vote, but at the same time, it fiercely protects the right of private property, which is the legal foundation that lets the capitalist class own the factories, apartment buildings, and resources you need to live. The state gives you freedom of speech, but it also defends a media landscape owned by just a few massive corporations. For Marx, the rights of man weren't timeless truths. They were the specific tools needed for a competitive market to flourish. This creates a perfect, self-stabilizing machine. The state offers political freedoms that keep people calm and give them the feeling of control, while its laws make sure the economic system, the one causing all the misery, keeps on running. You get the power to change the political puppets, but never the economic puppet master. You get to feel like a free citizen for one day at the ballot box, so you can put up with being an unfree worker for the rest of the year. Now, we can't talk about On the Jewish Question without tackling its most toxic and debated legacy. The essay's second half takes a sharp, dark turn, and Marx uses language that has led many to call him an anti-Semite. He pivots from political theory to what he calls the worldly Jew. He asks, what is the secular basis of Judaism? Practical need, self-interest. What is the worldly religion of the Jew? Huckstering. What is his worldly god? Money. He then draws a metaphorical line connecting Judaism with the selfish commercial spirit of modern society. In one infamous passage, he says the Christians have become Jews, meaning that all of capitalist society has adopted the greedy spirit of huckstering he stereotypically links to Judaism. These passages are, to put it mildly, deeply problematic. They use ugly, centuries-old anti-Jewish stereotypes, tying Jewishness directly to money and commerce. Many scholars say this is an indefensible echo of the casual anti-Semitism that was common in 19th century Europe, and perhaps a reflection of Marx's own internalized prejudice, despite his own Jewish heritage. But other scholars read it differently. They argue that Marx's target wasn't the Jewish people or their religion, but capitalism itself. In this interpretation, Marx was hijacking Bruno Bauer's anti-Semitic language and twisting it into a critique of everyone. His argument, though phrased in a truly awful way, was that the economic logic he stereotypically called Judaism had become the universal logic of the modern world. The point wasn't to single out Jews, but to call for a human emancipation that would free everyone, Jew and Christian, alike from the worship of money. The debate is still fierce today, but it's a critical reminder that even within a brilliant philosophical argument, the language of prejudice can leave a dark and permanent stain. These are tough, uncomfortable ideas that make you question everything you thought you knew about freedom. It's easy to write them off, but it's much more interesting to wrestle with them. If you think questioning our biggest assumptions is what it's all about, then make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell icon. We don't do easy answers here. Let's go back to the big question.
When you cast a vote or post a political hot take online, are you exercising real freedom, or are you just playing a part in an elaborate illusion? From a Marxist perspective, the answer is both. Your civil rights are a political truth. They exist, they have legal power, and they're definitely better than having no rights at all. But they are also a human fiction. They're a lie because they promise a universal freedom that they can't possibly deliver inside a capitalist system. They give you equality in the abstract world of politics precisely to cover up and maintain your inequality in the real world of economics. The right to speak your mind doesn't give you a platform. The right to vote doesn't stop your landlord from kicking you out. And the right to liberty doesn't free you from the 9-to-5 grind you might hate. Ultimately, Marx's critique leaves us with a haunting and shockingly relevant question. What good is having the right to choose your political masters if you have no power to challenge the economic system that masters you every single day?